Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagano. We are back here at Studio 130 in the Central Iowa headquarters of Iowans for Tax Relief and Iowans for Tax Relief Foundation. I am joined here today for everyone's favorite conservative podcast with John Hendrickson. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing fine.
Good. You were fired up this morning.
Yes.
You had a lot you wanted to cover. So
yes. Yeah.
That's a robust pre-production meeting.
Yeah.
It usually bodes well for the podcast later in the day.
There's a lot of news stories to discuss this morning.
There really is.
Yeah.
I think the biggest political news would be the election of a new House Speaker.
Yes. Yeah.
So
after 3 weeks?
Yeah. So I mean, it's good. It's good that they can now govern.
Yes.
Apparently, until they have to pass another continuing resolution in 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll start it all over again, or what?
Yeah.
So what do you know? What do you know about Mike Johnson?
I don't know a lot about him, and what I've read about him, he seems like a very strong conservative, which I liked, and so he seems to be a good choice. So I think there's a lot of conservatives that are happy with him being any. I don't know. He wasn't necessarily a household name like Jim Jordan, but he has pretty strong conservative credentials, which is good.
You, as the resident historian around here, I did read somewhere that it is, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but exceptionally rare to have the Speaker and the Majority Leader from the same state.
Yes, yeah.
So you've got the Speaker, new Speaker Mike Johnson from Louisiana, as well as House Majority Leader Steve Scalise.
Yep,
so that's interesting.
Yeah.
No real takeaways on that. Apparently, we're supposed to be outraged, though, as average Americans over his election. This is a term Politico had him as MAGA Mike.
Yes.
So we should be fearful of that. Axios titled it "MAGA Gets Its Speaker." I don't know that that's a pejorative for a lot of those folks in Congress either. But the real outrage, John, he had a Bible with him up there.
Yeah.
How dare you do that? Outrage.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm hopeful, but I come back to, I guess, where I've been at all along on this. The problems in Washington, D.C. are much deeper than who's leading one caucus in one chamber. Is that, and for no other reason than you can elect the most conservative person to ever set foot in Washington, D.C. You've still got liberal Democrats controlling the Senate and the White House.
That's absolutely right.
So as optimistic as we might be that a acceptable speaker was found, I think our expectations should be very muted.
Yes, yeah.
On this, right?
You're absolutely right.
Because the wins, as we go through this whole drama again, the same political forces are still at play here, right?
Yeah.
And so,
there will have to be some level of compromise because it's just the nature of divided government.
Well, I think that's right. I also think that there are some things that they do need to do, but there'll be a way. What I hope doesn't happen is that there are some political realities that will come to bear on all this, and we end up going through this whole charade all over again. So another article, I think it was in the Axios piece that I read though, John, as they're going through the vote, and some of the congressional Democrats were snickering that this was, I think one congressman from New York's name was read on the roll call, and somebody else said, well, bye-bye, that meant that, you were sealing your fate on your political career. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I suppose there are some times when a particular vote could matter, but what matters is who you are, your own personal record, and the work that you do in your district, and then the overall political wins.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, the 2024 election is not going to be about who the Speaker of the House is.
No.
Even if congressional Democrats want to turn Mike Johnson into their version of Nancy Pelosi, which I suspect isn't going to work, but even if they do that, the next election is about Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
It is, yeah.
And so you're going to have a sort of a generic ballot that exists based on that. But this idea that who someone voted for speaker is going to be determinative of it's just absurd, right?
I don't I don't buy that either.
So I guess the implication is that a certain member of Congress has otherwise earned the vote of an undecided or a swing voter in their district, but because they voted for their party's nominee to be speaker, that swing voter's like, no, I'm out. Mm-hmm. You know, they supported President Trump. They supported an America First agenda. They're pro-life. They're want to see, don't believe the liberal narrative on January 6th. I'm with them on all those things. But because they voted for Mike Johnson for speaker, I'm out?
Yeah.
Really?
No. Yeah.
I don't buy that. And I don't buy it for our Iowa delegation either.
No.
You're from Southeast Iowa. Do you think that this vote by Marionette Miller Meeks for Mike Johnson for speaker, and thank you for your vote, Congresswoman Miller Meeks, do you think this is going to change anyone's mind in Mount Pleasant?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So this is all, I guess what it comes back to is this myopic DC mindset that everything revolves around the issue of the day inside the United States Capitol, because it's just not true.
Yeah. In fact, I think it was yesterday when I was driving into the office, I had the radio on, and there was some group running ads against Representative Nunn.
Yeah.
And the ad wasn't about the speaker controversy. It was actually, I couldn't believe it, but it was actually blaming Congressman Nunn for inflation.
Right. Which
there's been some TV ads about that too, and I can't remember what, it was some left-wing group that was running it.
I think that's just damage control.
Yeah.
Because undecided voters in this country, and we have opinion polls all over the place, blame President Biden and Democrats for inflation.
Yes, yeah.
So this is all about trying to see if we can't maybe pull a few folks back, because people aren't buying that one.
No, they're not.
That's ridiculous.
No.
So, look, issues still matter.
Yes. Yeah.
And voters are smarter than these folks often give them credit for. Mm-hmm. They know. And it's the reason that Joe Biden's approval numbers are as dreadful as they are. And they're dreadful in swing state.
Yep.
You know, I was going through this with someone the other day, looking at swing state polls, and Joe Biden is losing to any Republican nominee in places like Georgia and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Arizona. Because they know, they get it.
Yeah.
And Mike Johnson or Jim Jordan or Kevin McCarthy or Steve Scalise or Tom Emmer or pick your member of Congress does not matter. They might try and make it matter, but that's not what American voters are going to be casting their vote for in this election.
No.
And frankly, as a veteran of doing some of this, I would welcome that. If I'm Zach Nunn, if I'm Marionette Miller Meeks, and you want to run that as your hit on me, bring it on. Mm-hmm. Because that means you're not talking about the issues of the day. Because I'll tell you what, Zach Nunn and Marionette Miller Meeks are going to be out there talking about inflation. They're going to be out there talking about border security. They're going to be out there talking about war across the globe. Mm-hmm. And they've got a story to tell.
Yes, yeah.
So if you want to talk about the swamp and what matters inside the Capitol walls, bring it. Let's go. Because they're going to hit you on something.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I feel a whole lot better now.
I think you're spot on.
I feel so much better, John.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. All right. Well, you made the mistake of watching the KCCI news last night.
Yes, yeah. A lot of stories.
The first one is apparently Governor Reynolds had a press conference about the return of National Guard from the border. And so she did a press conference about that. So take it away.
Yeah, and so there was this was the second mission, I believe, where National Guard and Department of Public Safety law enforcement officers were dispatched to the southern border in Texas, specifically in Texas, to help stem the tide. As we all know, there's a crisis going on with unprecedented levels of illegal immigration, and so the governor gave a press conference of what happened, and basically, as a result of Iowa's efforts, I just took a few notes from what they accomplished. They
is that on the Hillsdale College notepad?
Yes, it is.
Good,
yeah,
good.
yeah,
All right.
yep. They were able to help apprehend a little over 1,700 illegal aliens. They turned over 1,200 to the Border Patrol, additional. They were involved in investigating 40 human smuggling cases, several drug trafficking cases, and they prevented a lot of narcotics and drugs and opioids from coming in. And so, there's been people critical of this because the governor spent $1.9 million of American Rescue Plan Act dollars for this, but my perspective would be is that this was well spent. I mean, the border issue, I think, is number one in a lot of people's minds, and rightly so, because not just the wide open border and all the illegal aliens coming over, but this is creating a lot of problems, not just for Texas, but also for Iowa with all the drugs coming across, but also we don't know who's coming across. And so there's a lot of questions of, especially, with what's going on in the Middle East, who's coming over. And we know it's not just people from Central and South America that are coming over. It's a variety of people, and this is why border security is so important right now. But I think the governor did a right thing. I mean, this was, and she was not the only governor to send aid to Texas, but other state governors did. But I think it was a good thing for Iowa to help try to help what's obviously the greatest disaster of this administration.
Right. I mean, let's remember what's led to this, which is this administration completely ignoring this problem.
Yes. Yep.
Completely ignoring the security of our nation's borders. So, okay, so what are we supposed to do? Just take it and say, come on in? Or should we, as states, find other ways to do this? Mm-hmm. I mean, states lead the way in policy in any number of fronts.
That's right.
And if the federal government was doing its job in providing the resources and enforcing the laws of this nation, this wouldn't be necessary.
That's
This is to remedy inaction from the federal government.
Yeah, this is a complete failure on the federal government's part, and a lot of people say, well, Iowa's not a border state, but it's still impacting Iowa.
Absolutely,
it's impacting all the states.
Yes,
and so I really think
is the implication that there is not drug cartel activity in the Midwest?
Yeah,
or that we shouldn't worry about foreign terror agents that mean us harm, that we know have come across the border, that we're not supposed to care about that in Iowa, that is not any one of our issues.
Yeah.
The security of this nation's borders are the concern of every single one of the 50 states.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think the governor did a right thing, and the other governors that sent aid to Texas. And so as you stated it perfectly, this was a response to the failure of the Biden administration to properly enforce and police the border.
If the left wants to have an open southern border, they should change the laws on the books to reflect that.
Yes, yeah.
But because they haven't, it is not appropriate to criticize those that want to see those laws enforced by whatever means necessary at their disposal.
And now look at the these liberal mayors. The mayor of New York City, the governor of Illinois, and these blue states that are complaining now because of Governor Abbott basically saying, "Oh, you want to be a sanctuary city, you want to be a sanctuary state," and now they're being overrun, and now they're starting to see the light of what kind of dangerous problem this is.
And it's, again, the security of the border is different from even the broader debate over immigration.
Yes, absolutely.
We are simply talking about knowing and controlling and tracking who is coming across that border.
Yes.
And doing it in an orderly and a humane and a legal fashion. And you can, any honest actor here should be able to separate those two issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've spoken my mind on this, John.
But
I think kudos to Governor Reynolds for being part of finding solutions
yes.
to the inaction or the malfeasance of the federal government.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, good. All right. All right. Last issue, John. KCCI again last night.
Yes.
Did a piece on libraries, community libraries across the state, concerned about what they perceive to be a loss in funding or a threat to their funding because of last year's property tax bill. Mm-hmm. So what's their concern here?
Well, they highlighted the Marshalltown Public Library in their story, and basically they were saying that because part of that property tax law called for the consolidation of levies, which included the levy for public libraries, that this could essentially force cuts in the library budget. Mm-hmm. And these cuts haven't happened yet, but again, it's just one more example of news stories that we're seeing of local governments claiming budget cuts as a result of this law. And I give KCCI credit because they interviewed the chief author of that bill, Senator Dan Dawson, who basically said that, no, there is no cuts, and it's time that, cities and counties they have to prioritize.
Right.
Just like we've talked about how the state has done this. And so, all that's happened is that levy has been consolidated into their general fund levy, and now they're going to have to budget accordingly.
So kind of at a simple level for folks that maybe haven't tracked this, you don't just pay one city levy. There are multiple of them. In fact, I think there were the 30 or more. And so you had your main city levy, which funded the activities of a city government, but then they could actually levy a special one dedicated just for your library. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what this bill did was, in the effort to bring some transparency to it, we're going to put it all together, and then they can decide whether they want to continue to fund the library or maybe there's other city priorities. Instead of trying to force and segregate all these different dollars around for all these different purposes, we get lectured about local control. Mm-hmm. This is local control. You can decide whether you want to fund the library or you want to build an aquatic center.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd be very surprised if communities stop funding their libraries.
Right. They're very popular.
Yes.
Now, I think libraries should change, adapt, and develop because they're different than what they were. But folks still like going and checking out books from the library.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there's other uses, and maybe communities can reimagine what the services are. Maybe it's combined with other community services and meeting spaces, and it's not just the library. I don't know. Much like states are trying to innovate on policy, local governments are welcome to do this too.
Yeah.
And let's put all the money into one bucket. I can understand where librarians are a little concerned because, well, we have to compete for our dollars now. We have to show that we're delivering value.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that we want to see happening with government reform there.
Well, and I think we should. I mean, I think that's at the state level. We're seeing that where various agencies and programs have to compete, and like I said, I would it would be unbelievable if there would be a library that would close down as a result, because it's libraries are still seen as one of the key services.
And John, you often try to fashion yourself as the most conservative person here, as sort of the intellectual, guide star that we follow. But you are very pro-library.
I am. I'm very pro-public library. In fact, I'm a former public library board member.
So let's just, folks, just to get that out in the open here, and so much so that he's started his own here in our office.
That's right. Yeah.
But I think here's the problem. All too often, local governments want to do everything that sounds good. I was watching a promotional video for one of the bond referendum yesterday. I think I sent this to you, John.
Yes, you did,
And the principle, they were arguing for pretty much the entire bond was a new sports stadium for a small declining enrollment district. And one of the main arguments provided is because the concession areas weren't up to standard.
Yes.
So library. Here's where you have to compete. You have to show to you, and I get it's schools and it's cities, but bear with me for the sake of argument here. You have to show that the library has more value than the concession stand at the football. Go.
Yeah.
Compete.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I could be wrong on this, but I think this is, again, more of the scare tactics that local government are just throwing out there to try to deter any future property tax reforms by trying to intimidate people by saying, oh, no, the legislature did this, and so now we're going to have to cut all these services as a result.
I thought you were making a librarian joke of like scare tactics and intimidation for making too much noise in the library.
That's
and
right.
The grouchy old librarian staring you down and shushing you. But man, that wasn't where you were going with that.
No.
All right. Well, I think that's good stuff, John. So we're going to have a lot more to say going forward on that. But I appreciate it. And with that, I think it's time to wrap things up. You have anything else you want to offer?
No. That's
okay. Good.
I think we covered everything.
All
today.
right. Well, you had a lot of energy coming in. I don't want to cut you short. But well, thanks again for joining us, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. Don't forget to leave us a glowing review, and don't forget to tune in next time on the next edition of ITR Live.